And bingo! Welcome everyone to another Here and There, another cheerful episode of Here and There, discussing things light and heavy and trying to find the balance therein. I have not the only guest I have, but the most regular guest, cousin Nicky.
Hello there.
And may I say, Nicholas is a distinguished man. He is a journalist, television journalist. He's been a reporter on the Middle East and NATO. He has been a newsreader for a number of years. And not only that, he is a legal eagle, a man who will stop at nothing to gnaw his sack of sawdust where the law is concerned. So if you need a good lawyer, look no further. Email this or write a note under this podcast, wherever you see it, on YouTube, on Facebook at There's a Will. There's a Will. There's, you know how to spell that? It's not Their or whatever, however you spell that one. It's There. There's a will. Where there's a will, there's a way. That's it. It's a play on a famous saying. Now, the famous cliche. So there's a will on Facebook. Also on Substack, you can find it under The Cure for Boredom. These days, I'm probably going to change the name back to Guerrilla Traveler, which is the name you'll see displayed under me here. Well, you see Nicholas Richardson under him, but Guerrilla Traveler, because that's my moniker on Skype, which will soon die. So I want to find another place to do it.
Yeah, well, you can swap Skype for free Teams, of course.
We can do Teams or we can do Zoom, free Zoom.
But the problem with Teams is the free version only gives you exactly an hour, then it just cuts off.
Yeah. Well, I want to thank Bill Gates and all the people who work for him for being an absolute technological tyrant. And having profited off early government investment to make himself a multi-zillionaire. But thanks for giving most of it back, Mr. Gates, to left-wing concerns. Now, as we move forward in this conversation, I also say, if you enjoy this podcast, please subscribe to my Substack. You can find my Substack on Substack. It's called The Cure for Boredom. That's the name. You can search it under that. Or you can put in Will Richardson with 2 S's in Richardson, not Will. Will has no S's. But Richardson has 2 S's, as that is my pen name. Now, what else can I say? Yeah, if you see this on YouTube, like it and subscribe, please. The same old thing, same old thing, same old thing. It helps, of course. If you watch this and you don't like it, then write a note why you don't like it. Do something. Don't just sit there. I don't always like things either. There are things I love to watch all the time, and I don't like them. So I have to give myself a spanking, or find someone to spank me, which sounds like it'd be interesting. What was I going to say? I had a joke for you, Nicholas, to make you laugh. So I called a friend, a mutual friend of ours, yesterday, and I said, now this friend has a tendency to pick up the phone and start talking to you when someone else is with him, without telling you that someone else is with him. Now, I don't know about you, but I like to know if somebody else is listening in.
Well, of course.
It's the CIA, the NSA, or some broad.
Of course you do.
2 years ago, I'd have been canceled for saying that. But now, in the land of Trump, I'll get canceled for something else. Anyway, all I'm trying to say is give us a shout out. Don't be shy. Write a comment if you disagree with us or agree with us. Come on. Let us know what you think. And then we'll let you know. Well, you know what we think. But we may change our minds by tomorrow.
Of course.
It's that kind of world these days. Isn't it that kind of world these days, Nicholas? What's going on, for goodness sake? Give us an overview. Give us a
It's hard to
diatribe.
know. It's hard to know what's really going on. Essentially, at the moment, what's going on is everybody's getting very excited, not necessarily in a positive way, about all these tariffs which President Trump is introducing, which
That was
will
my number one subject for today. Go
which will
ahead.
of course cause chaos throughout the trading world.
You're
And
against
I,
American manufacturing. You don't think Americans deserve their
well,
own manufacturing?
of course, Americans, everybody deserves to manufacture, but the reason that so much of American um, stuff is manufactured elsewhere is because American big business, not the American people, American big business, aided and abetted by American big management consultants, decided they could make more money by relocating their factories to countries with a low wage rate. So I
Well,
gather
not just
that
low rate. In some
the
cases,
average, the
slave
average,
labor.
yeah, the average hourly rate I think in America is something like $50 all told. Well, in Canada, it's less than half that. And you go to more far-flung places, it's even less than that. And that is essentially one of the reasons why so many factories have been relocated from the United States. But I think COVID did show that for many people, not just in the United States, but also companies in Europe and elsewhere, that reshoring, bring it home, or nearshoring, bring it to a geographically closer country, is probably the way to go in terms of ultimate safety of supply chains, as well as actually having more control over quality and other things. So it'll be interesting to see. But I was listening on the BBC at lunchtime on the world at one. Some Americans say, yeah, well, it would be very bad if the rest of the world started imposing tariffs because that would really affect free trade. And he wasn't able to answer the interviewer's question, well, aren't you guilty, therefore, of hypocrisy if you think it's a good idea for America to introduce tariffs, but a bad idea for everybody else to introduce tariffs? And unfortunately, the chap didn't really have much of an answer for that one. So it's another case, I think, of an attempt at American exceptionalism. But the point is, of course, in all of this, that historically the United States has been a much more self-sufficient economy than many other countries. I mean, its size, its geographical location, meant that the fact that Americans drive Mercedes cars or whatever imported cars they drive is a matter through choice. There are plenty of American manufacturers who make cars, and one of the reasons why there are more European car imports to America than the other way around is a lot of American vehicles are just not suitable for European roads. I mean,
And
and
that
this
being because they're too big.
they're too big. So it's just a different philosophy. So it's not necessarily that the world hasn't been designed to gang upon America, as Trump would have us believe. Indeed, it could be argued that America has more often than not been the one doing the ganging up. But there we are. So this is causing, as you can imagine, a lot of confusion and a certain amount of concern everywhere. Not least because everybody's economic forecasting at the beginning of the year, governments, was based on something, on a state of affairs which is completely different. Now, whether Trump, of course, in a couple of weeks' time changes his mind, ironically, one of the companies which is badly affected by this is Tesla, the company largely owned by his great mate Elon Musk.
Indeed.
So there
Yeah.
we are. It's not. I mean, but generally speaking, I think if history has shown that free trade, all things being equal, is generally a good idea, and tariffs and trade wars are generally a bad idea.
Yeah, but the point is, though, that America allows in lots of goods with very low or no tariff, as I understand it. I mean, I'm no tariff expert, and many of the other countries, including the EU, put very high tariffs on imports. That's the
Yeah, I think it varies from country to country and sector to sector. I mean, one of the arguments, of
well,
course.
where the countries don't have tariffs or have lower tariffs, the United States will not have a tariff or have lower tariffs. But where they have high tariffs, and versus the low tariffs on their good or that country's goods or a group of countries' goods is where the rub is. So what to do about it is the question. I know a number of people who are against tariffs. Most of them live in Europe, I'm against tariffs in the sense that generally against tariffs because I think it restricts businesses to be
I
able
agree.
to find the best market for their products at the best price. But I'm also against, or I think it's a bad idea. I'm against is maybe too strong, but I think it's a bad idea to use exploit people in foreign countries, especially extremely poor people. Although I was a part of a project. Here's how that works. I was part of a project in Nicaragua, the poorest country in Latin America, along with Haiti, I think, but that's an island. So if you look at Latin American continental countries, it is the poorest country by far. All right. It's next to a very successful country called Costa Rica to the south. Um, uh, we could talk about the political problems of Nicaragua. Traditionally, it always has a dictator. Now it's a left-wing dictator called Ortega. Before it was a series of dictators under the name of Somoza. In between, there's been somewhat of a so-called democracy since 1979 and the overthrow of Somoza. But nonetheless, there is very little money there. So if you go there and you invest, as we did in a factory, uh, you know, almost 20 years ago now, the result is that the government's very happy, and you do, even at low wages, provide a lot of work for people who have no work generally. So this is the thing. If an American company goes in and builds a factory in an area where people previously had no money or next to no money, and now they have a regular wage that is more than not only what they didn't have, but more than what, say, the normal wage would be in their area, then this is um, an improvement, an economical improvement. And
Of
I'm
course.
disclosing that I was part of a company that did this in a very poor country, that did employ people, and they were very happy to be employed. They still stole everything that wasn't nailed down, but they were very happy to be employed for the most part. Your
Well, of
comments,
course.
please, on that.
Well, yes, and there's no doubt about it. That sort of investment has really helped to improve poverty on a worldwide scale. We think these jobs are very poorly paid, but for the people who have them, well, they are poorly paid by our standards. But for the people who have them, who may not have had a job at all, they are a godsend. And so there are two sides. And if you look in world terms about the general reduction in poverty, this sort of globalization of economic production has had a major effect and a major positive effect. The problem is, of course, there has been no balance, and increasingly you see in the more advanced economies the effects of where industry has just deserted it. I remember a trip I took a few years ago from New York City, from Philadelphia to New York City, and you drive through, the train rather takes you through all that area, Delaware, I think it is, and that anyway, the route on the map, and you just go through a landscape of endless empty and abandoned factories. I mean, that's quite,
Well, this is between New York and Washington, New York and Baltimore, for example. There, yes, I don't know when you took the trip, but there's still a lot of abandoned factories.
yeah, well, it was some years ago
Particularly,
now, but yeah.
particularly New Jersey, places like Newark. I was trying to explain to someone, you don't find, even in ex-communist countries, uh, anything like the scale of ghetto or underprivileged area or whatever the hell you want to call it, terrible stretches of abandoned stretches like you do in the as you do in the United States. I mean,
Yeah.
you don't find it in Central Europe, even though it was under communism, and you would find, a sort of uh, a level of deprivation, but not degradation.
Yes, well, that's because, of course, Central Europe has been one of the beneficiaries of this trend. Look at
Well,
Poland. A lot of
I
it.
meant going back even
Oh,
to
yeah.
30, in the 90s,
Yeah.
when people like you and the long-term observers and people who've lived in this part of that part of the world have were witnesses too. You can exchange that firsthand knowledge just for something you read in a book, for theory.
No.
And you can't, just as you can exchange, how about this for a transition? Uh, Firsthand knowledge of Ukraine and the war to people who've never been there, hardly know where it is, who've never even been to Europe, even to London or Paris in many cases. In other
Well,
words,
this of course,
ignoramuses.
yeah, this of course is part of the,
Ignoramuses, I call them.
yeah, well, this of course is part of the
You know what an
problem.
ignoramus is?
Yeah, somebody who's very ignorant.
A dumbass. That's the
Yes.
literal translation. Go ahead.
Aha, you're very good. Yes.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
and this of course is the problem. Increasingly, we have politicians who are making decisions, and their general knowledge, their general education, they are not equipped to make these decisions because they have no context in which to put their decisions. In many cases, it's willful ignorance, in fact. Tony Blair, when he was used to take great pride in the fact he was completely ignorant of and chose to ignore history, except when it suited him in the Good Friday Agreement, when he felt the hand of history on his shoulder. But he was obviously a frustrated
The Good
actor.
Friday Agreement was the agreement about Northern Ireland.
About Northern Ireland, yes.
Yeah,
So
and the IRA, but people don't know that, and young people watch this. So what Good Friday? What you talking about, Jesus? They wouldn't know that,
well,
and they probably
exactly, yeah.
know who Tony
But I
Blair
mean,
is.
this is the point that in fact, so many people now, even people who've been to university and are in theory educated, know so little about the world around them.
People go to university for a GPA, not to learn anymore. They
Well,
don't take.
the problem is the universities have turned themselves into another branch of the consumer society. So they're selling degrees, and
Yeah,
so
but I don't. We know this, but I don't.
their
Nick, I don't want to
customers,
get
yeah,
stuck on education.
no, but
Education,
their
it's a whole
customers
other subject.
expect to be given a degree because they're paying, and they don't
Nick,
really
Nick,
expect to do all the things that you and I had to do when we were at university, which was essentially to learn how to think.
yeah, we just said that. Let's move on, dear boy.
Yeah,
Uh, let's go back to tariffs because I think you hit on it. Can I read you a little bit from this
please
Daily
do,
Telegraph article? Would you like to
please
hear
do.
this? Okay. Businesses will shut down. MAGA backfires as Americans suffer under tariffs. This is from the Daily Telegraph. The Tory graph, as it's known uh, uh, by some people in Britain. Um, the president has promised utopia, but U.S. companies face a much starker reality. So I don't want to. It starts off with a case of a fella who's stopped manufacturing in China and moved his business to Vietnam because of costs and the tariffs. But the president had pledged yesterday which was Monday, to put tariffs on all countries and is prepared for what he calls Liberation Day on Wednesday, when he will announce sweeping reciprocal tariffs on U.S. trading partners. But the reality on the ground for American businesses is quite the opposite. Instead of utopia, companies are grappling with rising prices, plunging confidence, and dwindling spending. Try to say that 10 times fast. Dwindling spending. Trump's Liberation Day could be cataclysmic for large swaths of corporate America. By mid-March, Trump had already announced tariffs worth at least $770 billion, 7 times what he implemented during his first term, according to investment bank UBS. Check it if you will. But these figures do not include the charges Trump could impose on imports if he follows through on his threats to apply reciprocal tariffs based on what? VAT policies in other countries,
Yeah, but the
which is a
point that
flat tax.
yeah, but the point is
I mean, which is
VAT.
an automatically applied tax.
But
Yeah.
VAT is not an import duty. VAT
No,
applies VAT applies to everybody in the country. So if I buy an American item, The VAT I will pay on that item is exactly the same as the VAT I will pay on a domestically produced item as a consumer. It has no difference. It is not singled out because of its being imported. This, again, of course, is a fundamental misunderstanding or a willful misunderstanding. The VAT is more closely akin to a state sales tax, perhaps. But it
Yeah, I was going to
applies.
say we have sales tax in the United States. There's VAT in Europe. Yeah.
Exactly. And it may be at a different rate, but I do not pay any less VAT if I buy a locally produced item as opposed to buying an item which has been imported from the United States. That's not how VAT works. And this is an example of whoever's advising Trump of being willfully ignorant of what the position is. But to say, oh gosh, in the United Kingdom, the rate of VAT is 20%, therefore we're going to put 20% on anything we import from the United Kingdom. It's just completely, you're not comparing like with like. It's just a misunderstanding.
It's also a bit much to pull the rug out from under American companies who have moved abroad and to suddenly tax their goods that are made in China because they're imported back to the United States.
Well, the other point is it doesn't take into account the complexity of modern supply chains, where almost anything you buy these days includes components which are made in a variety of places.
Okay, let's move on. I think we covered that subject as much as we can. We're not focused tariff specialists, but I think that was a reasonable comment, at least to give people some food for thought from our point of view here. Here's another one that caught my attention. A story that caught my attention is about Americans moving to the UK because they're afraid of Trump. Have you heard about that?
Well, I probably out of the frying pan into the fire, if you think what Starmer and his merry men and women are doing. But anyway.
Well, as far as I can see, it's not your ordinary middle class person. It's all these rich anti-Trump people, you know, on their government or corporate pensions. They're people who are who've retired early or whatever, related to they have made their pile and they have pensions, so they want to go live in splendid elegance in, you know, the richest neighborhoods in London. So one woman was talking about how she retired to London, which sounds like the opposite of everyone I know who's British. Everyone retires to the country. No one retires to London if they're British. Come on.
I suppose it depends where they're retiring from if they're American. It's an interesting one, but you're right. It doesn't.
No, this. Isn't England really groovy? If I live in a really nice neighborhood in London, I can go to they have pubs, and I can go to the British Museum whenever I like. I mean, it's a joke. I lived in England for 10 years. I did it when I was young and vibrant. And young and vibrant. And I enjoyed the hell out of it. It's a great school to learn about life, London. What did Samuel Johnson say about London?
When a man tires of London, he tires of life.
Well, I got tired of London, but I just wanted more and different life. That's why I left.
Of course.
But at that point, he was right, because what else was there in the 18th
exactly.
Century? Now, but what do you think the current state, if you're not on a rich American on some pension, or some actor or actress who's butthurt over the people's choice of a president they don't like, what can people expect when they move to London or move to Britain?
Well, I suppose they can expect high prices for a start. But of course, the point is, those people of the sort you've just mentioned, their experience of life generally is very different from everybody else. So they probably won't notice the high prices in London because they're probably living in parts of America where the prices are equally high and where they're used to paying a lot for everything. So they probably won't notice.
New York, Washington.
Well, exactly, those sort of places. I suppose for them, they're going abroad and they have all the culture and history, but they don't have to change their language very much, if at all. So that's probably a blessing. They are getting in touch with their roots if they're of if they're of British stock originally, or Irish stock, I suppose. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. If you're living in London on those terms, then it's very agreeable. If you're an average person with an average family, trying to live on a normal salary in London, it's hard work because everything is so phenomenally expensive these days. And
Everything is expensive.
this is one of the what's quite ironic is the number of billionaires and people of that nature, non-doms, who are leaving because of the change to the non-dom taxation regime.
Yeah.
When you think that the top 1% of the population pay 29% of all the income tax the country collects in a year, these are not the sort of people you really want to be upsetting and causing them to go elsewhere. But of course, this is, unfortunately, we've seen it since the French Revolution, the left-wing attack on anybody and anything. Forgetting Mrs. Thatcher's famous words, the problem with socialism, you eventually run out of other people's money. As we've seen, the current British government is rapidly running out of everybody else's money. We're going to face recession, and we're going to face increased unemployment because of the burden put on, on employers for the increased national insurance contribution and the filling about with the rates that there is a limit to what people can actually bear, what the economy can bear. We have a unique problem in the United Kingdom in that the energy policy is completely ridiculous, and we have the highest energy costs in the developed world, which is destroying British industry. We've lost fertilizer, we're losing ceramics, we've lost the chemical industry. We're about to lose God knows what else as well. And the government think this is quite good because we're lowering emissions. We're not lowering emissions. The world doesn't care. The net amount of, if we just export our emissions to China, the wind currents in the atmosphere will still blow the pollution backwards eventually.
I know, exactly.
But you can't. But you have otherwise intelligent people who are so obsessed with their own propaganda. It is ridiculous. But it is destroying jobs, which is destroying livelihoods, destroying communities.
Obsessed with your own propaganda. Remember COVID, where people were totally obsessed with their own propaganda. The New York Times recently came out, and one of their reporters was on one of the TV shows and saying it was ridiculous that Wuhan was a laboratory where they were studying the COVID, the virus, doing gain of function research, and people thought it came from a market, from people eating bats, which sounds racist to me. You know, those Chinese, they love their bats. Ignoramuses.
Well, I think in the Wuhan wet meat market, almost any creature is available to be bought and eaten. So, I mean, he wasn't so far wrong.
Yeah, but it was wrong because it's not where it came from. It
came from a laboratory, but at the time,
we said that ourselves.
It came from a laboratory were cancelled, ostracized, silenced, whatever it was, because the World Health Organization had been captured by the Chinese and they were putting out different propaganda.
That's why. And so people during COVID refused to think. They refused to use their brains. They were thinking with their solar plexus, which is not very useful when you have a serious potential problem.
Well, I think that people were seeing the truth and they were being forbidden to report.
I think that the governments were just doing what governments do, a control experiment. We said don't do that, like a really stringent and overweening parent. I said don't do that. If you do that again, you're going to the Hooskow. Hooskow is, you know what a Hooskow is?
No.
It's a prison or a jail.
It's a jail.
Yeah, it's a jail. So the whole thing about COVID, what my point is, if there is a point, I think there's a point. And the point is that COVID was a an absolute pristine example of government stupidity, government uh, uh, overweening government oversight, and that is to be looked at all the time. You know, got to find the balance. You can't have a government which tells you, you know, when you can use the toilet, and you can't have a government that gets rid of all regulations, right?
Well, exactly.
I go back to
There's, yeah,
Teddy Roosevelt. I'll beat that drum again. I know you get tired of me doing it.
and I
But what
don't.
a
I'm a
great man.
great, like you. I'm a great supporter of Teddy Roosevelt as well.
A lot of common sense in the guy. I mean, he did
I
some
mean, I read
amazing.
his. I read a biography of Teddy Roosevelt. It's a great. He was a great president.
He was a great man. He was a great individual, great man. Died at 60 of a heart attack because they say because he had a wound where he was giving a speech in Buffalo, New York, some years before, and a man with a revolver shot him, but his notes in his breast pocket saved his life. The bullet penetrated, but it did not go into his heart, saved his life. He continued the speech, of course, for another hour and a half after having been shot. They don't
That
make them like that anymore.
they don't make him like that anymore. That exactly is the problem.
Mm.
They don't make him like that, and the population from which those were drawn is also not of the standard it was. I think that's part of the problem.
Yeah.
We live in a strange age. On the one hand, we have affluence beyond the wildest dreams of even our parents, and technological advances and things we can do, and
Beyond
yet,
beyond the imagination of the king and queen 100 years ago.
well,
Go ahead,
indeed,
sir.
indeed.
Go ahead. Yeah.
You know, most people live lives of ease, and that even aristocrats of previous generations could only have dreamt of. And yet, despite that, we are allowing our brains, our capacity for rational thought, to be ever diminished. We're putting our reliance on machines, and we're allowing our eyes to be the dominant feature, and we're being entertained by moving images. We're not actually picking up a page, reading it, and letting our imaginations do the work. And that is part of the problem. Nobody wants to learn anything. Nobody wants to read anything. It's all instant gratification, dopamine fixes from some daft film on YouTube or wherever it is, or
Great
TikTok
Scott.
for the younger
You remind me of
generation.
Douglas Murray when I speak to you. You're a very cogent
Well,
interlocutor.
Douglas Murray, of course, is one of the few who A, thinks rationally, but B, the most important thing about Douglas Murray is he's not afraid to say the truth. And he is brave enough to be in a room full of people who disagree with him and still stand up and speak to them and say his piece. He doesn't
Yes,
sort of,
also, that's right. I heard him. You must listen to the new Lex. What's his name? Uh, Damn it. What is Lex's name? Anyway, there's a guy called Lex who does these long interviews, and they're often very, very good. I find him interesting interviewer. And he's an MIT guy, computer specialist, but somehow he's become huge on the internet, but it's usually intellectually based uh, uh, guest. And there's a new one with Douglas Murray, which is fascinating because you really do get Douglas Murray talking on a range of subjects for 2.5 hours. And he was in making one of his points was exactly the point you're making, uh, and very common sense approach to things that were going on. And even though he's a conservative, he was looking. I don't know that Trump is conservative. I mean, we don't know what he is really.
well,
Um,
I think you've hit the nail on the head there. We don't actually know what he is.
hmm,
And he has captured the Republican Party, which has allowed itself to abandon its own critical thinking and seemingly to allow Trump to get away with whatever Trump would like to get away with this particular week. And one looks at the United States Constitution, one looks at the balance of powers, and one has to ask, in many of the things which Trump is saying he wants to do, where is Congress in all of this?
yeah,
Where where are people saying, hang on a minute, you are elected president, you are entitled to do certain things, but the Constitution requires there to be a balance, and that certain things have to be lawfully done. Not they just seem to be sitting on their hands and letting Trump get away with murder. Not literally. I'm not accusing him of murder. It's just the English phrase "get away with murder."
That's a cliche.
Yeah,
Another
exactly.
cliche.
Basically, but that seems to be the point. That it's not clear what Trump really.
No.
And the danger in all of this is he wants to make America great and make America strong, but he's actually weakening America because he's taking the years and years of accumulated wisdom, the years and years of respect for American values, the years and years of respect for America in the world, and he's trashing it by being unpredictable. This nonsense over Greenland, ridiculous. This berating of Zelensky, but at the same time, this appeasing of the Russians. He's not a great negotiator. Putin is the great negotiator in all this. Putin is playing a bad hand extremely well. And, and Trump is playing a much better hand, and he's turning around, to use his analogy, the cards. He's turning around and showing Putin the cards before he plays his hand. Absolutely ridiculous, really. For a man who claims to be a great negotiator, this is pathetic. It really is pathetic. He's a bully, and he's not a good negotiator, and somebody should tell him.
Well, the whole thing with Zelensky was awful because you don't accuse Ukraine of starting that war. It's like accusing Poland, as we said before, starting World War II.
I might as well accuse J.D. Vance of being a teenage drug dealer to make the message go home. J.D. Vance, your mother was addicted to heroin because you used to procure it for her. Now, he would be offended if I said that because it's not true. But on a par with what they were accusing Zelensky of, it's about that level. Maybe Vance would wake up if somebody said that to him. Yeah, maybe. I don't know.
The thing is, I was going to say, the thing is that there are a lot of ignoramuses talking a lot of nonsense without experience. I don't know how many times Vance had ever even been to Europe. And his wife is, I believe, foreign born, but Indian, isn't it? Which should make him a little more culturally conscious, I would think, because between being an American and being born in India, there's we're all human beings, but there's a huge cultural difference.
Well, of course.
Anyway, so
yeah, I mean, these people let themselves down, and because of the positions they hold, they let the country down as well. That's the point. I mean, if J.D. Vance were just J.D. Vance, venture capitalist, he could spout rubbish from morning, noon till night. It would make no difference. But J.D. Vance, as vice president, does have to be a little more careful in what he says, because he may think it's a big joke. He may think we all have a developed sense of irony, but many people around the world who bear the United States ill will can take his words, twist them, and use them to garner support against the United States, as the Russians are doing, as the Chinese are doing, who are going around the world saying, see, you can't trust the United States. We will help you. We have no territorial ambitions. We don't want to destroy trade with you. We will help you. And this is the unfortunate byproduct of what Trump is doing and saying. So he's not making America great. He's not making America stronger. He's actually making America weaker, unfortunately for the United States. And as I said a few moments ago, the problem is that the rest of America, by which I mean Congress, seems unable to actually use the powers it has been given to sort of say, well, hang on a minute, can we just not be a bit more sensible about this? You can't have a country ruled by executive order. I mean, I must look at the American Constitution to see what it says. But this is just, this is like my knowledge of the Constitution. I haven't got as far as executive orders yet. But for him to just write executive orders 100 in 100 days is no different from Louis XIV. Or some of these other medieval monarchs, the way they used to run the countries, or Joseph Stalin.
State is me. I am the state. Okay, but yeah, look, don't worry.
I'm not worried. I'm just making the point.
No, I didn't mean you were literally worried. Nicholas, look, don't worry, dear boy, because here's the thing. Um, the voters and will vote on Congress in less than 2 years. And if people are dissatisfied, they will show their dissatisfaction because both Senate and Congress seats will be up for grabs,
Yeah.
which means that it can switch. So there is that. Uh, there is that check. You know, you can't take over the United States. There's too many checks. Plus, you can never be sure of the army or the military that they would follow. It's been tried before. It was tried in the 30s, and it didn't work because the general, Smedley Butler, that they went to, a bunch of plutocrats went to, and some politicians said no, and then publicly uh, announced what had been the conspiracy. Another example of conspiracy is always coming out, which is why I think Oswald did it. Um, Not only the only reason, but that's been on everybody's mind too. I don't want to go into JFK. We
No,
could do a
no.
whole JFK program next time if you want to. But the thing about the Putin situation is anyone could have predicted that Putin was not, anyone with any knowledge of this area could have predicted that Putin was going to act exactly as he has, using more force immediately when he's patted on the back, using more force immediately in terms of rockets, etc., and troop movements against Ukraine, especially when immediately the intelligence was frozen, and a child who'd read a little bit of the newspapers, could tell that. Now, I may be exaggerating a little bit. Let's call it a very intelligent child, okay, not an ignoramus.
No, of
And
course not.
and then, if I may, the the idea. I mean, we said on this show that Trump doesn't like being upstaged. He likes to win, and Putin, by doing that, made Trump look bad, and like he was winning the negotiation. Now they see that he wants no part of the ceasefire without, saying, "Give me all the territory up to Kiev or Kiev or however you want to pronounce the damn word." We called it Kiev forever till the spelling police got in charge, um, including Ukrainians. Look, I've been to Ukraine nearly 50 times, so not a rookie on spellings or the streets or the
Of course not.
the provinces of Ukraine. A lot of friends there for many years, over 20 years. So um, now we hear that, which was also predictable, that Trump, the headlines over the weekend, Trump is pissed off.
Well,
He
everybody could
said,
have told him.
but it's like, I thought this was a smart guy. This is the major problem in the world right now, Ukraine, and has been for 3 years. It's the major problem. Read something. Know your man. Putin is invaded. How did the war start? How did the war start? What's the cause of the war? Putin invaded Ukraine.
Exactly.
The Nazis invaded Poland. These are the causes of the war. You can get rid of all the other crap, right? I
You
had a
can.
long talk with Anthony McFarland Gonzalez a couple of days ago, talking about NATO and its positioning. I won't go into that now. People can watch that. Fascinating. He's moving up and up in the cybersecurity hierarchy of NATO. Very he's such an impressive guy with his empirical knowledge of war zones and special forces, and he's got a hell of an intellect on him too. Just a great guy. But Costa Rican, as it happens, half Costa Rican anyway. I don't know which
Okay.
half. Yeah. So he said we'll talk about Latin America one day. But he's a super guy. Cybersecurity for NATO. Fascinating interview. Okay, but back to our fascinating interview. So if we can predict this, Nicholas, well, we are older and more experienced than most of these people in European affairs and having traveled a lot in the world. So, and not living on an expense account by some corporation or government. We have done it on our own and made our way as entrepreneurs and whether as a journalist or in other endeavors. What in the world is wrong with people that they would criticize Zelensky and praise Putin? I see the hand of Tucker Carlson in this and his Orban fascination.
So I'm not quite sure how to stop my telephone.
Phone? Do you have to
Yeah, it's
change
my
it
bat
to,
phone. I'm not quite sure how to stop it ringing.
do you have to go down the pole and
Ah, there we are.
slip into your cowl and go save Gotham?
Something like that. Oh, no, it
Alfred
stopped.
Butler? No, you have an American butler because Batman had an English butler, so you have to have an American butler. He says,
Yeah,
"How you
I
doing,
have no
boss?
butler at all. Yeah, well,
How you
I
doing,
think,
boss?"
yeah, I really don't understand this. I think you're right. As like we said earlier, too many people rely on celebrities on television for their, or on YouTube these days for their information. And Tucker Carlson is one such person on whom they would rather rely rather than actually reading a book and working it out for themselves.
Well, not
It,
everybody. Yeah, exactly. But not even just reading a book. But not everybody can go to these places, and that's the thing Douglas Murray was saying in this interview with Lex Friedman. Lex Friedman uh, is the guy's name. Everybody who watches podcasts probably knows him, but the Sirius podcast anyway. He was saying that's why he goes to the trouble spots. That's why Douglas Murray goes to the trouble spots to see for himself. And I
himself,
know exactly what he means because I've done it myself in places all over the world. I have gone to areas of conflict. I have gone to certain countries to find out why things are the way they are. So you can talk from an empirical experience, even as a travel writer. You've got experience of the place
of course.
rather than just talking through your hat from, while you're shoveling shit in Louisiana.
Well,
Right?
exactly. Exactly, that's it. And yeah, as we've said before, America historically, a very relatively small proportion of the population has ever really been concerned about what happens outside the United States. You
Well,
know,
there's a massive provincialism. I
yeah,
remember having, as a young student, I remember having conversation or I didn't have a conversation, attending a lecture by a former Secretary of State, um, uh, Dean Rusk, and asking questions and saying at the time, why do you suppose there's so much anti-Americanism, yeah, anti-American feeling, sentiment in Europe with all the United States has done for them? And it was an interesting response that he had. He said, "There's always anti-Americanism, but under that is a lot of admiration. Don't forget, and a tinge of of competition. So don't take it too
course.
serious. People just vote with their feet to come to America, and America does a lot for the world." So I thought it was a great answer from Dean Rusk when I was a tyke. Go ahead.
No, yeah, yes, you're right. I don't understand this anti-American per se, anti-Americanism per se. I mean, it seems very strange to me. The European Union, of course, all the politicians are the worst examples. They sort of like to slightly sneer at the Americans for not being very bright, yet at the same time, the European Union sort of apes in a pathetic way everything America does, like this American visa waiver, this system where you want to fly to America, you have to fill out an extra questionnaire online and pay your $5 in advance or whatever it is. Well, the European Union has introduced a similar system. The Americans have a flag, so the European Union has a flag. People keep talking about there's a European Union anthem. They want a European Union army. This is just, imitation is the sincerest form of flattery, I think,
You
in this
need
particular.
look. Europe has had coalition armies forever that were effective. That doesn't need a united
Well,
European
no, we
army.
have
Disaster.
We have
Think of
NATO.
the administration costs. It's ridiculous.
Well, it's pointless undermining NATO by creating something purely European. What will its function be?
Well, we
And
determine.
how can you create an army, a European Union army, when some countries in the European Union are effectively neutral anyway? And Ireland, for one. It's about time the Irish, if America wants us to find somebody who's freeloading, they should go to the Irish, who spend nothing on defense, but rely on the fact that everybody else is going to be defending the world, which they, as Ireland, need to survive. Why don't they do that? Because half the American presidents pretend that they are Irish.
Yeah.
Well, the only ones who could actually really claim any sensible Irish connection were the Kennedys, and that was from Northern Ireland anyway. So the whole thing is a complete romantic nonsense.
I'm Irish too. Almost every Southern person with Southern origins whose family's been here for a while will have a Irish connection, and or Scots Irish, as they call it, the Northern Irish ones. And I've got tons of it, baby, believe it. But
yeah, I know.
I'm not able to I'm not able to go to Ireland and get a passport because my family's been here.
But the point is just
long.
Yeah, but just to return to your point,
what I'm speaking from an undisclosed location.
We've gathered
in the bayous of Louisiana.
Bayous of Louisiana, yes.
I was in the bowels last time we talked. Now I'm in the bayous.
The bayous of Louisiana, yes. But the point is, unfortunately, the actions of President Trump and Vice President Vance are unfortunately fueling what anti-Americanism there was by picking fights with people who are supposed to be your friends. He's actually proving the saying of Henry Kissinger, or somebody else had a slightly different version, that it's best to be America's enemy than America's friend, because America will always betray its friends and appease its enemies. And that's what we're seeing. Putin is being appeased. And I think we will find, believe it or not, President Xi will be appeased before too long, and that really is frightening. Because Putin is not really a danger in the way that the Chinese are a danger. You only have to look at the ability the Chinese now have, or the increase in their navy, but the ability they have to build ships compared to the ability the United States has to build ships, for example. Unbelievable difference. We have allowed in the West, through complacency and stupidity, not we, the politicians, through complacency and stupidity, we have allowed our industrial capability and our own security to be undermined, almost to the point of no return, almost. Maybe people are waking up now. I'm not sure they talk a good talk in the European Union. I'm not sure anybody's actually physically getting round to it. I've yet to see the new factories springing up. The United Kingdom, even as we speak, is about to lose its final 2 blast furnaces to become the only country in the G20 which can't make virgin steel. And if you can't make virgin steel, you don't have the quality of steel you need to make armaments, tanks, warships, etc.
I have a question for you. We've got to finish. What is the difference between virgin steel and a steely virgin? I'll leave that with you. Don't answer. Now, the last thing I want to say to you, you went to school. Did you have to take cold showers or baths?
No, not cold ones, no. The water was actually heated.
Yeah, because they use the cold bath in English schools, or the cold shower in English schools. Look, a new study finds that taking cold showers, or baths even better, will replenish your cells and lead to a longer, healthier life. What do you say to that, sir?
Well, yeah, there has been a lot about this in the press of recent months, indeed maybe even years, about wild water swimming, for example. This, taking ice baths and things like that. I think the thing is that it obviously does, or in fact taking cold showers, it does seem to have some beneficial effect on your immune system, provided you don't overdo it, or you don't so shock your body that you die of a heart attack, which some people have, unfortunately.
Or you get pneumonia.
Yeah. So, the evidence does seem to suggest that this is actually quite beneficial.
Very interesting, isn't it? My dear, we must wrap up. That's all
Okay.
we got this week. I want to thank everybody for watching. Please, when you
Yes.
see this, like it, wherever it is, forward it to your friends, etc.
And
Look, a couple of guys here who've got a lot of experience of knocking around the world, and as professional journalists, not just pretty faces. Well, if we ever were, we're certainly not now, so you don't have to worry about that.
well, speak for yourself.
Yeah, well, you are looking well.
Yeah,
All
I'm
right.
still in my I'm still in my Hollywood matinee idol years.
Yes, you are.
In
That's
the days when people
exactly.
knew what a matinee idol was, of course.
I can
Now,
just see you.
unfortunately, they know. Or now, unfortunately, all they know is idle matinees in front of Netflix, which is something rather different.
That's hilarious. What nice turnaround. I can
And
see you walking down Fifth Avenue in your linen suit, looking like a latter-day Cary Grant. Now, may I say, that's it for here and there. I'm Will Richardson here. It's Nicholas Richardson. There, I'm in an undisclosed location, the bayous of Louisiana. Nicholas reporting to us or showing up for us from Warsaw in Poland in front of his usual bookcase full of interesting volumes. And my word for the week is don't be an ignoramus.
yes, don't be.
See you, everybody.
Okay, bye.
Take care.
Thanks.
Talk to you soon. Thank you very much, my
My
friends.
pleasure as always.
Okay, love talking to you. Bye.
Bye.